Well, hey, Trish, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Rafi. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. I want to talk about company values and missions and how that works into profitability. But before we do that, just give us a brief rundown. Who is Trish Williams? What got you into doing what you're doing now? And then we'll kind of go from there.
Fantastic. Trish Williams identifies as a Canadian. I lead with that. I identify, if
Yes.
my accent isn't the biggest giveaway, I identify as a parent. Asterisk, just a few weeks ago, I became an empty nester. My
Oh, wow.
youngest went away to university. I identify as a female. I identify as an occupational therapist. And I used to have a bricks and mortar company here in Calgary, Alberta, where I live, a pediatric facility, which I lovingly grew from Zippo zero, me in a rented room, to eventually having a staff and grossing, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what I started to realize was that people were reaching out to us, not just for our services, but OTs across the world, actually. The first one was from Kentucky and the second one was from Ireland,
Yeah.
saying, hey, how have you done this? And then I saw that as a great switch to what I do now, which is I coach OT entrepreneurs who identify as female to start, grow, and scale their businesses. And I was very happy with that approach because it felt like a nice. I'm always up for a challenge,
Yeah.
and I also loved it as how can I say this? Almost like a healthy aging thing for me. If that doesn't sound ridiculous, but I'm 52. Like it was time and a way to get off the floor and playing with
Yeah.
kids, and having something mobile, which this business is, and alluding back to having my children out of the house. As a single person, I can make some really interesting choices right now for myself. So it all kind of worked, knock on wood. That was
Yeah,
the
all the
plan.
pieces fell into place.
Yeah, it
I
kind of
remember when you
did.
made the decision to like close your brick and mortar
Yeah.
clinic, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, how's this going to work out?" And I was kind of like sitting in the background watching because it was
Yep.
something exciting to see, but at the same
Yep.
time, I'm sure it was puckered you up a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, it really did. And what's very interesting is that I wound up selling it. So I wound up making the decision to close it first and actually wound up selling basically a closed clinic, which is like, how does that ever happen?
Yeah,
How it happened very briefly is a colleague of mine, local, reached out to say, hey, I'd like to partake in your OT services. Can you help me start a business? And I realized I could probably sell her the clinic. So we talked about what are the assets in that clinic. It was, my policies and procedures, my
yeah.
systems, my marketing, you know, the logo and the brand and the client list, etc. So it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah. So did you do like an asset sale for the clinic itself? And I mean, we're going to take a little rabbit hole here.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
did the valuation work? Because it was closed, right?
Yes.
So it
We
wasn't
valued it
generating any revenue when you sold it.
correct. Pretty interesting, eh?
Yeah.
And I had, left the building. The building wasn't mine. I was renting, and I had sold off most of the hard goods, like the toys, et cetera, and the assessments, et cetera. It was a private sale, and we
Yeah.
decided together not to get into a whole bunch of lawyers making a whole bunch of valuation. And I'm okay with that because I knew this person. We were really very respectful of each other's work. It felt like the right person. I mean, Rafi, I was actually standing in the shower thinking about my meeting with her coming up as like, the OT entrepreneur coach consultant. And all of a sudden I went, wait a second, why doesn't she buy Spring OT? Like there was nothing more than that spark. And again, with really, in my opinion, great sales is a conversation. So we just
Yeah.
continued the conversation and we knew each other really well. So could I have gotten more money out of it? Of course I could have. But I didn't, that wasn't really the main motivation at that point. The motivation was like, let's just keep this easy and smooth and bring in lawyers when we need to. They left with an asset. They were like, a company, they were thrilled. And she made $100,000 right out the gate, right? Because
Yeah.
everything was tickety boo.
Ready to go.
Yeah. So, and I left with chunk of change that I didn't have beforehand. So it was, maybe it's a very Canadian way of doing business. I'm not sure, or a female way of doing business, but it was really, talk about values and mission about what we're going to talk about. It felt really good for my values to have a conversation with a friend, hand her something, and walk away with some money
Yeah.
for it.
And it was a win-win for both of y'all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then let's talk a little bit then about company values and mission and all that. I think a lot of times, you and I are both in the consulting world, and we hear these words a lot, and sometimes they're very like pie in the sky. And how do you take this and make it something practical? Kind of, what's your view on what should be, or how do you develop the values and the mission of a company, and then let's take it practical from there instead of making it this pie in the sky thing where we're going to make the world a better place to
Exactly.
actual business processes and procedures, and how you treat employees and all of that.
Yes. So your question then is, how do you
Yeah, where do
get
you
this
start?
mission? How do you get
Yeah.
this vision? How do you get these core values? Well, I started by consuming a whack ton of information on this very topic. I had hit a plateau in my business, bricks and mortar, in about 2017, 2018. And I realized that I was the bottleneck and we needed to grow. I couldn't seem to hit, a ceiling above 300,000 and gross. And I did so much work to learn how to grow a business because nobody taught me. I had started this thing on the fly. I was growing this thing on the fly. Business books didn't resonate with me. So I decided to open all of them and read them all. And for that, I developed a process with prompts. And actually, small plug, I now do this. I teach people how to build strategic plans, but that's really where I started. I didn't even need a plan for the bank
Yeah.
because I didn't go and get money from the bank until way later. So I never needed to come to get a loan to start the business with like a business plan. So I was making the strategic plan when we were like way in the growth phase, right? And it was the beginning of building a strategic plan where I learned how to set the mission and how to set the vision and how to set core values. So I'll give you a small definition on that.
Sure.
The core values, the vision, and you know what? It's really interesting, Rafi, because I use vision and mission interchangeably. And we may choose to do that in this podcast, but they're actually
Yeah,
different. And I don't want,
exactly.
okay, you're with me?
Yes,
Okay,
I'm
what's your
tracking.
definition then? Okay. Do you want to
So
tell me what you think?
yeah, yeah. So at least the way we do it in our clinic, and even with Rehab U, is like the vision is the long term ideal, right? And then the mission is what's the strategic implication of that vision.
Exactly. And then the core values are it sets the agenda and guides the behavior. Now, I often mix mission and vision, and I actually see it in a lot of writing as well, in a lot of the things that I consumed. So if people are listening to this, we're not splitting hairs. We want you to like get something out of this that isn't like, I don't remember what Rafi and Trish said the difference between vision and mission is. It's to come away with something that's bigger than yourself. So that's how I did it. I just consumed a whack ton of material and then developed prompts that really set those for both companies, for my bricks and mortar and for Trish Williams Consulting.
Yeah. And you were doing the bricks and mortar for a while, then you started the consulting.
Yeah.
Did your vision or mission or values, whatever, did they overlap in the two, and one kind of naturally led you into the Trish Williams Consulting, or did you have to take
Hmm.
some time and say, what is going to be different about this business, this new endeavor that's going to be different than the bricks and mortar, that's going to lead me, like maybe we need to develop a new vision statement or mission or something?
That is such a fantastic question. And I have never, ever thought about that. Here's my answer. It was number two. So
Okay.
I think that the core values would be the same because the
Yeah.
values are kind of about me. Um, and the vision and the mission are significantly different for Trish Williams Consulting. I'll be honest, I struggled with a bigger, badder vision and mission for my bricks and mortar Spring OT because I felt at the end of the day, if I'm being really honest, we were doing a lot of the same therapy and treatment that a lot of other people were doing, although we didn't have a huge market here in Calgary. We had some differentiation based on my training with,
Yeah.
the sensory processing. That kind of blew the lid off of everybody. There were still a lot of people doing like traditional gross and fine motor. or social skills. And we lent, leaned into that,
Lended.
leaned into that. And yet I'm not sure I did a great job as a CEO to really lead with that all the time with my clients and with my team. Whereas I got really serious about it with Trish Williams Consulting.
Yeah. Cool deal. So then you talked about developing it. So you've got your, let's say you come up with your mission and your vision, and you're saying those stem from, and I agree with this here, they stem from those values. And those values, where do they come from? You reading them out of a book? Are they coming from,
No.
deep down inside? Like,
yes. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to open up the website that I have now, and we'll talk I can give you a few examples. So,
sure, yeah.
We walk alongside is one of our values. We're not above everyone else. We're figuring it out. And together we grow and take risks and learn. And that is quite literally me. I'm super growth mindset. In fact, it's one of my cardinal words. I used to say it's growth. And then somebody suggested to me a couple months ago that it was actually expansion. And that's really the core word of why I show up in the world every day. Like if I have done any sort of expansion in my day feels great. Another one is we are more than a business. We're a movement. Our community stands together to better the lives of others. And I've always been very independent and very collaborative. So again, that's just me. Another one is our future vision drives change for you today, meaning we leave the profession better than we found it. And Rafi, I know you share that with me.
Yeah.
You and I have been on university faculties. I have sat on a ton of focus groups for the college. Even as a student, I was at McMaster University, which is one of the pioneering universities for problem-based learning, inquiry seminar, et cetera. So that's always been
and for OTs, it's like everybody in OT school hears about McMaster.
Yeah, thank you. Yay! And I actually wound up teaching there too. That was my first faculty job after I had graduated 10 years before. But I will say the values required collaboration to pull those words out. I am a chatty Cathy. I can be a wordsmith at times. I did use a lot of prompts to get those out, but to get those perfect words for a website, I actually worked with a copywriter, with Jenny Gill, who really helped me.
Oh yeah. Shout out to her. She's another OT in the space.
Who has now become a copywriter.
Yeah, that's awesome. So these values, they're obviously their core, they're your personality, especially in small businesses like ours. I always say, like, at some point, the values, what's driving the business is the CEO or the owner, whatever title you want to put. And it's kind of their personal values that's kind of getting imposed on the business, and that kind of leads into the systems that are created or the mission that's developed or that grows out of that, right? So how you took those values, you developed them, and then how does that translate into mission, vision?
Well, I realized that, especially being a leader in the space, there when you and I started, there were not many people in this space doing what we do.
Yeah.
Even a couple of years ago. And I think that encouraged me, and probably a certain amount of confidence in having grown a brick and mortar, to actually set a pretty big vision and agenda. And so again, when I kept thinking, what else? What else? What else? And it took a lot of thought. And where I wound up landing was that my mission here is to empower OTs who identify as female to claim their financial freedom by growing and scaling their businesses. And the vision for that, the mission for that is that I personally believe and know from the statistics that what women or people who identify as women do with their money is different than men.
Yeah.
And we use it to better our team, to better our family, to better our community. And I understand that that's really about impact. So even though the company and the brand, the brand is called OTs Get Paid, it's more than that. It's about getting women paid for impact. And all the conversations I've had with all of the OTs that are entrepreneurs, that's really what they want. And I think you're the same, right, Rafi? Like, I don't think you started this just for the money. Like, you have 5 kids.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, you need the money.
Exactly.
And second of all, I mean, I'm guessing, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, inferring maybe because I know you, that there's more at play here for you than the money. It's the impact that you want your business to make.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's absolutely true. Probably because our values align in some level. But yeah, I think that there's more to life than money, although you need money. But the reality is, I'm a big fan of, and I use this in the book here, the story, The Alchemist. Have you read it, Paulo Coelho?
I sure have.
That last story where he talks about the boy going to see the wise man, and he gives him the drops of oil in his spoon, and he spills it, and he, when he's looking at everything, and the wise man looks at him and says, well, the secret to fulfillment in life is to soak in all the wonders of the world, but never forget about the drops of oil in the spoon. And for me, that's the people, right? It's all about impacting individual lives. That's why the book is about, humanizing healthcare, building relationships. And then it's the same with the consulting work that I do too, right? Like, I've got clients that I haven't worked with in years, and we still, chat all the time because there's a relationship there. So
exactly. I would like to say one more thing, and that is, from a practical perspective, women often don't have money conversations, and we are a helping business, which is primarily female based. And I wanted to bring that human element to leaning into those conversations. And it is similar to like your big vision, which is humanizing healthcare, saying, I'm going to lean into money conversations. I'm going to help women break through those societal limitations, especially for helping professions. It gets a heck yes from a lot of people.
yeah.
And it also gets a no from others, right? So I want to point out that if people are thinking about their mission as they're listening to this, don't hesitate to tick some people off.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm a big believer in that. Like a mission or a vision that is worth standing for is going to, at some level, be very appealing to some, and then it's going to be oppositional to others, right? Like, you can't make everybody happy.
Yeah, and nor should you.
Yeah.
I mean, you want your people, you want your heck yes people. Yeah.
Let's circle back, because you said something that was very interesting, and I do think maybe it's a woman thing or a female thing in general, but I do think it bears greater discussion in healthcare. You said that people don't like talking about money in service-based organizations, maybe because they're female. I have a feeling like it's bigger than that. Like, you talk about wanting to be profitable in healthcare, and people nut up. Like, why do you think that is?
I have a podcast planned about this, actually. It's
Oh,
only
okay.
an outline. It's only an outline, so maybe you're helping me figure it out.
Yeah.
I read something somewhere in a woman I know who does negotiation for a living, and she has a theme in her negotiations called the Mother Teresa complex, and how it's difficult, I think, for people to negotiate if they identify as this Mother Teresa complex. And I feel that there's a incorrect assumption out there that in order to be a good person, which is what most of us went into healthcare with that vision, right? Like, I used to tell people, actually, it's funny because we charged a lot of money at Spring OT. And I remember parents, because it was peds, would look at me often and they'd kind of get grumpy in my face and say, like, oh, this is a lot of money, particularly, the male identifying person. And I would say to them, like, I'm driving a 10-year-old Honda. Like, I'm not here to like buy a Porsche.
There's not a Maserati in the back.
That's right. I would like to
right?
send my children to university with the money you're going to give me. I'll just be straight up about that. But it was almost as though those people were ticked off at me for charging what I was charging. Well, and especially in Canada where we have socialized
Yeah,
medicine, but that's a
exactly.
whole other
That's in
story.
and of itself, yeah, a
Yeah,
different story.
how dare you when you're supposed to be a helper? And I'm an Enneagram 2, so I know about helper. Like that's who I am. I'm also an Enneagram 3, which is like go, go, do, achieve, achieve, achieve. So my guilt complex is gone because when I actually read the Enneagram and I was like, darn, that's exactly me. Helper, helper, do. I was like, well, of course I'm going to be a healthcare provider that's going to push the buttons. So I think, and I saw that a lot in my team, like when I started to embrace more, well, if the bricks and mortar raising our prices and my clinic manager leaning into sales and teaching her how to have sales conversations rather than me on the phone all the time, that was really hard. She balked. She was like, I know you're worth it, but what about the children?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that I definitely see that Mother Teresa complex. And I think it stems from this idea that at least, we're probably somewhat different market wise in the US and Canada, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still the same basic
Yep.
principle. Like healthcare is a service. You're helping people who
Mm-hmm.
are, sick or wounded. And there's this idea that by charging a lot of money, you're taking advantage of somebody who
Exactly.
has no other options, right? Like this person is sick and you provide the treatment and you're taking advantage by charging a lot. And um, so there's that aspect. And then the whole aspect of, we've all been on a used car a lot at some point in our life. And we feel sticky and disgusting and yucky walking away from that, process. And we don't want to be seen as a dirty, rotten salesman. But the reality
Exactly.
is, and I tell this to people all the time, like as long as you're charging or you're offering people, you're not forcing them, obviously, but you're offering them an option to work with you or to have you present or bring your solution to bear on their situation, and that person sees it as valuable because value is entirely subjective. And we've had patients that don't want to pay $5 for therapy, and then we have
Exactly.
patients that'll pay $150 a visit,
Exactly.
because value is subjective and there's a spectrum there. So as long as you're giving people the option and
Mm-hmm.
the possibility of having you bring your solution to bear on their situation and they find value in it, like
Mm-hmm.
that is a free transaction that is not in any way coerced, and it should be encouraged.
I love that perspective. I also, to add on to that, what I tell people that are my clients and what I told my team at Spring OT was we actually need to make money to stay open so that we
Yeah,
can start giving money away.
exactly.
Like eventually, we had a certain number of spots every quarter, I think, that I actually gave free reign to whomever was answering the telephone. Like, you don't need to come to me. If you think after hearing that person's story that they need one of, I don't remember how many spots it was. Let's say 4. Let's say 5. I don't
Yeah,
remember. If you feel that they need a sliding scale or free or whatever, I was in love with free because free often meant people didn't show up.
yeah.
That's the only reason. Even $1 means people are going to show up. And we had like scholarships for people who came to our summer camps. We had people traveling like 4 or 5 hours away. We would find a hotel for them. We would set up a corporate account, and I gave my team carte blanche to do that. But we needed to make money in
Yeah,
order to do that. So don't start out as a charity. Like, become profitable. Learn how exactly what you're saying. There were many, many times, Rafi, people would say, well, I'm definitely coming. And I'd say, okay, but you actually live like 40 minutes away, and there's an amazing therapist that I know that would be really helpful. That's 10 minutes from where you live. Like, we referred people all the time.
yeah,
Sometimes they'd say, no, 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 it doesn't matter. We're still coming to you. And other times they would say, great. In fact, one of the lines I used to say, because again, socialized medicine, is if I'm here to try to help you find some free money first. So, for example, if your child is 2.5 and under, they can qualify to have a free screen or a free assessment, rather. However, the wait list was also 2.5 years
yeah. Forever
long.
long. Yeah,
So, again, it's all about options. And at the end of the day, what I say is sales is a conversation. I mean, I sold a closed clinic
yeah.
through a
Over
conversation,
conversation. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Awesome. Cool deal. Well, after that sidebar, where are we at? Okay, developing that mission, vision, values. How does that impact business process? We've been talking a little bit about it. It's kind of come out in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You gave your people carte blanche to do a sliding scale or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's an implication of the values and the mission and the vision coming out in the business process. But how does the mission and the vision translate to, I don't know, patient intake, or name a process? How do you develop a process based off of that work that you did before on the mission and the vision?
I think the word that I keep circling back to is profitability. How does it affect profitability? And there are many ways. I categorize them as internal and external. So internally is your people. Externally is your customers. So let's talk internal for a second. I recently had an exit interview with the person who was doing my social media for Trish Williams Consulting. Her name is Lisa Westhorpe. She's an OT entrepreneur herself. She's amazing. Go follow her stuff. Nurture OT, I believe, is what she's under. So we had an exit interview because she no longer wanted to do this job. It's not that she was unhappy. It's not that I wasn't paying her well. It was, I actually want to spend more time with my children and on my own business. Great. We can't compete with that. What I didn't know until the exit interview was the reason she worked for me was because of the vision and the mission.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I had no idea. And we'd been working together for at least a year. So that is an example of how missions and visions and values can affect your profitability internally. Lisa was a revenue generator in my company because social media, it's not our main revenue generator, but social media was one of the ways that we got clients.
Yeah.
So that's how that works from an internal perspective. From an external perspective, I think it's a bigger conversation about your customers in terms of marketing, how you market to them and how do you serve them. Really briefly on marketing, most people take two approaches, take a relatively cookie cutter approach to marketing, and it's not wrong, but it's kind of like you're doing one of two things. You are trying to solve a pain point, you're trying to show the customer the pain point of theirs that you solve, or you're trying to lift them up and encourage them through pleasure. So let's take exercise. Let's pretend I owned a gym. It would be, you feel gross, your pants don't fit. Blah, right? Stepping on the scale is painful and you probably are close to being pre-diabetic and you can't walk up a flight of stairs without huffing and puffing. That would be the pain. The pleasure is you feel amazing. You look great in a mirror. You get to be friends with all these other people at the gym, right? So there's two ways of marketing that, and that's pretty traditional. Leaning into the mission and values. Sorry, I said that wrong. The mission and the vision. See, even I get confused at times. Is a more modern way of marketing. And I've seen it. And again, I'm not going to split hairs, but it's called causal marketing or movement marketing. Have you heard of these before?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about it or you want me to?
No, keep on going.
Okay. So it really is people uniting around your cause. And this collective feeling of we're all in this together. So I can tell you, I'll use my business as an example. And a lot of people call with a whole ton of pain points, right? The one I hear the most is, I don't know how to do this without working 100 hours a week and I'm still not making enough money. That's the one I hear the most when people call me for consulting and coaching. That would be more of a traditional, let me help you solve that pain point. Let me lean into, let's get you more time. And the pleasure is at the end of the day, you can feel like the valuable CEO that you are, right? The movement causal marketing is, I know you can do more with the money you want. and it'll have a killer impact on you. And so, again, we talked about this, like, which is going to get the hell yes? Am I allowed to
Yeah,
curse
sure.
on your podcast? Okay. I don't even consider that a curse at this point. Okay, moving on. You know, and that greater mission and vision can really help attract a client in a really valuable way. One of the first example I ever heard of this was Ben and Jerry's. What comes up when I say Ben and Jerry's to you in terms of their social agenda?
Oh, I don't know. I don't eat a lot of ice cream.
Oh, okay. I'm also older than you, so it's probably like, more of a forefront because they're an older company. I remember going to Vermont. I used to live in Boston, and we toured Ben and Jerry's in Vermont, and they were one of the very first companies to really lean in to green, to lean into the environment. That for every pint we sell, we're donating this much money back to the environment. I just did a podcast last week on the owner of Patagonia. Did you hear about that? What
I
they
did.
did?
That's huge.
So the owner of Patagonia gave away their $3 billion company, and every single piece of profit is now going towards the environment. So you can have environmental causes, social causes, governance causes. You can lean into what's meaningful, but it really it creates a more sustainable, long-term company because people grow alongside you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of the idea. I don't know if you've read, what's his name? Schaefer is his last name. He wrote a book called Marketing Rebellion
No.
several years ago, but
Yeah.
it's very similar to that idea of, instead of following this process of like, now I'm a big fan of copywriting and Dan Kennedy, and that's all wonderful. But
Mm-hmm.
instead of like leaning into that as your sole, like the high level strategy of your marketing, you
Mm-hmm.
do tap into the tribe, if you would, of
Yeah.
people that are in alignment with your values. That's going to resonate with what you have to say, and then you
Mm-hmm.
leverage that to grow your business. So the idea of user generated content and all that kind of stuff kind of plays into it, but it starts with, who are my people?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of values do they have that align with mine, and are they going to resonate with this message or this service offering, even when you're talking about developing the service offerings of your business?
Well, and it does a few other things. Like, inherently, although people might not know they're thinking this, they might not have the words around it. Again, to illustrate my mission and vision, because it's the one I'm most familiar with and the one I talk to clients about the most, I think they would also expect a certain amount from me as the CEO of this company. So they're probably going to assume that I pay my people well, because that would be in misalignment, right? And they want people, like, everybody wants to have people paid well, right? Another thing is, they would recognize that I would place value on the results that they are getting. So if I'm asking and leaning into, we need more money in the pockets of more female OTs, I'm going to follow up with that by consistently checking in with my clients and making sure
They're making more money. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So there is an alignment of not just the marketing or your team, but how you're running your business.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of talking about that, especially with the clients that I work with. Like, if your mission is X, whatever it is, like, your internal business processes need to reflect that, because patients or clients are going to see that. They're going to see that you're talking about, humanizing healthcare, for example, and then they come into your clinic and you're just all about, getting the range of motion measurements and setting
Or it's
some
a bot that greets them at the door.
exactly.
A little robot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with that. You need to make sure that it's lining up like that. So it's awesome. We're getting here near the top, but I always end with this. I always ask people, if there's like one or two main takeaways you'd want somebody to get from this episode, particularly in this case around mission, vision, values, and how that leads to profitability, what would they be?
It's not fluff work.
Yeah.
It's not do this worksheet because your kindergarten teacher told you to do this worksheet.
Or your business coach told you it's important.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something that resonates. Like when people are like, why isn't my child playing in the sand?
Yeah.
Why are they sitting at a stupid thing doing circles? Like, I actually happen to agree with that. You can learn how to do circles. Again, from a Pizzo T perspective,
Yeah.
right? You can learn how to do circles through messy play rather than sitting there with a chunky crayon at a little table when you're 5, okay? It's not fluff work. It's actually meaningful. And so I think that's the biggest takeaway is spend the time. If you need Rafi's help, go get Rafi's help. If you want my help, I've got a strategic plan. I have a whole CEO payday around it. Get my help. If you want to just comb a bunch of resources, listen to this podcast. I have a podcast specifically about this, how to build a strategic plan. Like there's freebies out there too, because it means something. It is meaningful to the bottom line.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Trish, thanks so much. Where can people find you? I think you've mentioned the website a couple of times, but give us all the places.
Oh, thanks. It's trishwilliamsconsulting.ca, again, Canada. And there was some turkey out there named Trish Williams who decided to be a consultant and grabbed the .com. I'm stalking her.
You're waiting for her to go out of business or something so you can snatch that domain.
Well, she hasn't done much with it, too. I feel like going knock, 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 knock. And I'm like, maybe that's for another day. You can follow me. Well, and the other actually easiest place is listening to the OTs Get Paid podcast. I do a podcast too. People really resonate. And you can get me on social media in the OTs Get Paid Facebook group. A lot of people DM me through that too.
Awesome. Cool deal.
Thank you so much, Rafi.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
You too.